Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is July 16th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, there's going to be a lot of map updates today, so let's get to it without wasting any time. So, first, I want to talk about Solidar and north of Bakhmut. So, the Ukrainians opened a new front there a few weeks ago, and they're having a lot of success. So, now they've gained some ground north of Solidar, and there's essentially two advancements from the south and from the north, essentially putting a lot of pressure on the Russian forces in the north and in the south in Berkhivka. So I think that the Russians are going to definitely be feeling the squeeze. And next few weeks, there could be some good news here as the Ukrainians continue pushing forward into Solidar. And this is one, I think, of the fronts that the Russians weren't expecting the Ukrainians to open. So this is positive. And additionally, as I've mentioned in my previous video, with the change of tactics by the Ukrainian military, the New York Times, with its article today, confirms that there has been indeed a change of tactics by the Ukrainian military, and they're now attacking more and more Russian logistical hubs, ammunition depots, the lines that are serving to feed their soldiers to the front lines. And so this to me is very positive because it proves yet again that the Ukrainian military can adapt very quickly. Whereas compared to the Russian military, for example, in Solidar or Bakhmut, a few months ago, they kept doing the same thing over and over, not changing their tactics whatsoever. And what did they gain? Very little, right? Bakhmut, yeah, they kind of took over the city, but at great cost. It exhausted them. And now they've lost the initiative. And so I think that the fact that the Ukrainians can adapt very easily and quickly is a proof that the Ukrainians are going to win this battle against the Russians. They're going to win this war against the Russians. There's no denying that. And at the same time, another reason why I'm so optimistic is also there's massive purges going on within the Russian military. I've showed you the video in my previous video of the Russian general complaining towards Shoigu about the lack of counter battery fire and him being immediately dismissed, right? And every general voicing an opinion that is not positive are going to be dismissed. And so this discontent, this sacking, or even detaining of Russian commanders and generals, especially following Prigozhin's mutiny, is only going to help Ukrainian forces as resentment will continue to build within the commanders and the leadership. And this leadership are definitely having more influence towards the regular Russian soldiers who, of course, are going to be trusting their commanders more because they're more loyal and more truthful to them rather than Shoigu or Putin, who don't care as much about their soldiers, or they don't care at all because they're just numbers. And so I think that this discontent is definitely going to start crumbling the Russian military even further. And this breakdown of morale, leadership is really going to be apparent in the next few weeks for sure. So the other updates, again, as I've mentioned, because of this change of tactic, the Ukrainians are striking more and more often Russian ammunition depots and logistical hubs. And one of them is Yuvilene. So just outside of Luhansk, it's a suburb that is very industrial. There's a mine there. There's a lot of factories. And so the Russians were storing ammunition there. And so the Ukrainians struck it today, and there's massive explosions, as you can see in this video or this picture. A huge smoke trail is coming out of that city. And so Yuvilene is extremely important. I'll show you why on the deep state map. So let's take a look. So Yuvilene is about a few kilometers away from Luhansk city, which is the capital of Luhansk. And so Yuvilene leads into different fronts that the Russians are currently fighting in. So one of them, as you can see, if you go west of Yuvilene, there is a fork here that branches off into Bakhmut first in the north. So you can see you can take this road that leads into Bakhmut and feeds all the different suburbs of Bakhmut where the Russians are currently fighting in. And the other road leads into Avdiivka and the suburbs of Donetsk. So you can see Debaltseve is another very important fork here. It's another important logistical hub for the Russians. And so you can see that following Yuvilene, Debaltseve, the Russians can also supply its forces in Avdiivka and also the outskirts of Donetsk city. So this is another important front for them. And the last one, if we start from Yuvilene, they can go north here. You can see here, north of Yuvilene. And then this other road leads into Kremina and Lysychansk. So they go like this, they go north, you have Lysychansk, and you have all the different cities in Kremina as well. And also, obviously, then it goes north into Svatove and Kupiansk. So Yuvilene is extremely important, and I think this attack that happened today is definitely going to weaken the Russian forces for the next week or two. So this is only going to help the Ukrainians advance perhaps quicker in Bakhmut and Avdiivka especially. We'll see, but I think Bakhmut is definitely going to have, we're going to have some great news from Bakhmut next few weeks for sure. So that's good. Now, the other front line, the other axis I wanted to talk about is Kurdyumivka. And so the Ukrainians here also picked up the initiative because they're also attacking north of Kurdyumivka and Klishivka. The Russians have reinforced Klishivka. However, they didn't reinforce Kurdyumivka. And so now the Ukrainians, again, are trying to find an opportunity where the Russians are weakest. And they're now pushing through Kurdyumivka. And now there might be reports that they might be almost in control of Kurdyumivka. It's not confirmed yet. But you can see the Russians are in trouble because they just don't have enough forces to play with. So they need to prioritize where they can reinforce their positions. And so Kurdyumivka, being that it's more south of Klishivka, the Russians are weaker here. The Ukrainians are pushing through. So we should be seeing some positive news here as well in nearby future. And the other news I wanted to talk about is Staromayorsk. So this is fresh news today. Pro-Russian sources are already claiming that they've lost Staromayorsk or almost lost Staromayorsk. The Ukrainians have entered the village of Staromayorsk. So this is very positive. You can see here that Staromayorsk is in that right beside the river of Mokryale, where the Ukrainians are constantly pushing because it's a very densely populated, or was a very densely populated area in the past, and now the Russians are using all these villages as a staging area for their defenses. And so the Ukrainians continue pushing, and so after Staromayorsk will be Urozhaine, then Zavitne, Bajanya. So the Ukrainians will continue pushing here, so this is very positive. And again, with Priutne, the Ukrainians are also pushing towards Priutne. So again, I'm expecting nearby future, within a week or two, some good news out of this area here. So that's about it for the map updates, guys. I'll keep you constantly updated as things change. So let me know what you think about the Ukrainian advancements here. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the visit from the South Korean leader yesterday in Kiev. And so South Korea has offered its involvement in rebuilding Ukraine for the reconstruction effort. So this is huge news because South Korea is a huge player and has massive industries that have been proven to be efficient and quality-wise very good. And so, as you can see in this article, the Ukrainian government has requested the involvement of South Korean companies in around 5,000 projects, estimated at $20 billion. So in addition, Seoul will extend support to the Ukraine private sector that is worth $32 billion. The assistance will focus on the construction of schools, housing, and hospitals. Seoul also plans to assist Ukraine in rebuilding water infrastructure after the destruction of the Kakhovka Dam. The private sector will aid reportedly encompass nuclear power plants, airport reconstruction, construction machinery, railway vehicles, and information technology. So very, very massive news. And, you know, it's going to be very good for Ukraine. Unfortunately, of course, the destruction is horrible. But at the same time, I have no doubt that following the end of this war, Ukraine will be rebuilt into a very modern country. And so this is positive for the Ukrainian people, especially in eastern Ukraine and the south, who have felt the destruction for the past, 2 years. Well, actually even more since 2014. And so South Korea has massive expertise as well. In the 1950s, it had a devastating Korean War. And, South Korea came out as a massive player. We can see South Korea is a huge success story. And so I think that there's no better player than South Korea in order to for the rebuilding of Ukraine. And also, another that leads me to the last point is that we need to make sure that all the foreign assets, the Russian foreign assets, that whether are in England or in France or in the United States, are being seized, because that's not being done right now. The West is still very reluctant at seizing all the foreign Russian assets that are just parked in the West, right? Whether it be their bank accounts, their villas, their real estate, their yachts. Some of them have been seized, but that's been just for show, in my opinion. All that needs to be seized because these oligarchs, these elites need to foot the bill for what they've committed in Ukraine and all the destruction they've committed in Ukraine. And also forcing eventually, once Russia loses this war, the Russian population to foot the bill and pay reparations for many decades towards the Ukrainian people. That's only fair in my opinion. So I find that to be very positive. The Koreans have a lot of expertise in rebuilding. They have great industries. And so I can only, welcome these news. So that's the video for today, guys. Let me know what you think about all the Ukrainian advancements today, about South Korea rebuilding Ukraine as well. And that's the video for today. Thank you for your support of this channel. I really, really, really appreciate it. I also appreciate your support for Ukraine. It's massive. It's really important that the people don't forget that there's a massive war going on in Ukraine, that the Ukrainian people need everyone's help. So that's it, guys. Appreciate your support again. Please subscribe to my channel and like the video if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you and take care. Bye.